Hello, this is for second period class. So for second period, um, this is what you're going to be doing today for homework. You're going to be copying this into your guided notes. So that way tomorrow we can work on an activity in class. So let's see here. So you're going to be starting off in your guided notes where it talks about Section 7, U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights. All right, so obviously as we kind of went through this class, we talked about the Declaration of Independence, how we declared our independence. We fought a war against Great Britain, and then from Great Britain, then you're getting into a whole new can of worms where we fight a war, we win. Now we start a government. Again, think about the first government that we had was called the Articles of Confederation. And think about all the problems that we talked about with the Articles. Federal government couldn't tax, they couldn't raise an army. Basically, the states were essentially more powerful. Think about why. Things we talked about how the founding fathers, they were afraid of a strong national government because that's what they dealt with in Britain. So then we led into Shays' Rebellion, and Shays' Rebellion exposed all those problems because there was this big rebellion going on in Massachusetts that was so large, essentially they were asking the federal government for help, and the federal government couldn't help them. So this is going to come to now the formation of a new government called the U.S. Constitution. That's going to outline the framework. It's going to change all the things of the Articles, all the problems and issues that we had. For instance, as we'll learn about in this next couple slides, about how under the Articles we only had one branch of government, which was the legislative branch. Now under this form of government, we're going to have three branches of government. We will have a president, and all three branches are going to be equal. So that leads us into, okay, well, what is the U.S. Constitution? It is the supreme law of the land. It's where all the laws that are in the Constitution are supreme, meaning that they're more powerful than the state constitutions. So, make this clear. States are going to have constitutions. Ohio, for instance, we have our own Ohio Constitution. Each state has one, but all the laws that are in the federal government are more important, they're more powerful than the state ones. They're the ones that the states have to follow. Again, we learned our lesson from Daniel Shays, from Shays' Rebellion, we learned our lesson from the Articles. We need to have a natural basis of laws that our country must follow and be uniform on. So ultimately, this Constitution, as I said, supreme law of the land, is going to be the foundation, the source of all of our authority for why we're able to exist. It's going to provide the framework for our government. It's going to outline all the laws, all the basics for what our government is going to entail. It's going to give each branch their jobs, the president their jobs, Congress their jobs, and their structure. So what are the basic principles of the Constitution? Really, there's a few of them, as you can see here. One is the idea of popular sovereignty, that the government resides in the people. The people have the power, meaning through voting power. So think about how, that would be an example of, Rousseau, the Enlightenment philosopher, about wanting a democratic type of government. So that's, again, an Enlightenment idea, Enlightenment thought that will be found within our Constitution. They also believed in something called limited government, that the government is not all-powerful. It can only do what the people allow them to do. So again, the limited government. So again, same thing, Locke and Hobbes and all the Enlightenment philosophers we talked about. They believed that there needed to be at least some kind of check on those that are in power. Then you have the idea of separation of powers. Again, the idea that under the Articles, you only had one branch of government. But under this new Constitution, we're going to have three separate branches, the executive, legislative, judicial, and they're all going to be equal. Not one branch is going to be more powerful than the other. So that's going to be spelled out throughout the Constitution. And then you have the idea of checks and balances in there too, about how to make sure. So for instance, Congress, their job is to pass laws. So they couldn't pass a law saying all blondes can't drive. Because that would be vetoed by the president. That would be challenged in the courts by the Supreme Court. So checks and balances is basically it's a method to basically make sure that the branches don't become more powerful, that the other branches can check them, basically. And then the last basic principle is something called federalism. Basically, you're dividing power up amongst the national and state governments. So, for instance, Um, you know, national government, their powers to declare war, their powers to collect taxes, and those kind of things. Now, states can also collect taxes. States provide licenses for, so there's teacher licenses. So here in Ohio, I have to apply for a teacher's license. In Florida, I apply for a teacher's license. The federal government, they don't get involved in that. If you become a doctor, same thing. You apply for the state medical board, etc. So that's a state issue. Fishing licenses, hunting licenses, those are state issues, not federal government. So there's some powers that belong to the federal government. There's some powers that belong to the states. That's what federalism basically means. All right. So again, what is checks and balances? I already talked about. I'm not going to read this flow chart to you. You're welcome to pause this and kind of look through it. But again, you can kind of go through that on your own. But ultimately, federal government makes or Congress makes a law. The president can veto that law. It's a check. So who wrote the Constitution? So now again, we're still in your notes. Who wrote it? It's James Madison. He's referred to as the father of the Constitution. And all things you should have learned about before. So it shouldn't be anything new. I'm kind of just reviewing this with you from 8th grade year. So some of his important contributions throughout the Constitution or throughout his life was the Virginia Plan. You have which basically is like the large state, small state thing debate, which for our conversation really isn't. You'll learn more about that in government. Then you have the separation of powers that I already talked about, and something called the Bill of Rights, which we'll get more into later on, and as well as tomorrow when you guys come into class. So what's the structure? So again, next year when you guys go to government, you're actually gonna read parts of it and dive more deeper into it. I'm not gonna necessarily quiz you on all this, guys, but just kind of telling you kind of what the structure is. This is the last part of your guys' notes for today. The opening statement, just like the Declaration of Independence, the opening statement is going to be the preamble. Basically, what's the document? What's it going to be about? It's the introduction. And then from there, you have your articles. You have 7 different articles of the Constitution. So you have Article 1 is all the things that relate to the federal legislative branch. Jobs of Congress, qualifications of Congress, what they can and can't do, their powers are all outlined there. Then you go to Article 2. Then you go to Article 2 is the executive branch. Same thing. It's the president. It's what do you need to do to become president? What's the qualifications? What's the job of the president, etc. Then judicial. And then you can kind of go ahead and read for yourself on this. But again, structured. What they can and can't do, their powers. And then finally, at the very end of the Constitution are the amendments. So there's 27 total amendments. And then the first 10 amendments, as you guys, I'm hoping, already know, the first 10 amendments are the Bill of Rights. For example, the First Amendment, right up freedom of speech and religion, assembly, and petition. That's First Amendment. Second Amendment, right to bear arms. So there's 10 of them that were originally written when the Constitution was first drafted. All right. So anyway, tomorrow we're going to be working on something in class that kind of dives more into the Bill of Rights. So thank you for watching this video, and have a good night, and yeah, bye.